just going to quickly go over, I think it'll take maybe 10 to 20 minutes to pretty much go over the higher level 2019 strategy for ZenMaid, and then the peanut gallery can ask any questions. We are recording this, as you guys watching the replay can see, so that it can be reviewed. The main things I'm going to be talking about here, like the ZenMaid strengths, like the overall like strategy. There are some weaknesses that I'll be talking about, but that'll be after the recording. All of the strengths are things that doesn't really matter if our competitors see. Some of the weaknesses I would prefer if, like, you know, they didn't, because I'm friends with like quite a few of like the competitor like CEOs on Facebook and stuff. So I'll talk about that like after we're done recording, and then we'll talk to the rest of the team about that when I'm with them, like in person or whatever. So I read a book recently which was called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, that laid out sort of like a lot of, you know, the basics of like, you know, high level strategy. We've been more of like we've taken the approach up until now of just like the sort of like, we know things that we have to do, so we're just going to go out and do them. And we've sort of like not thought as much maybe about the bigger picture as we should have. So this year we're really trying to focus on strategy. Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, I thought was a terrible book, but I actually got a lot of takeaways from that. It was one of those ones where as I was going through it, I was listening to these different sort of case studies and stories and was like, oh, like that's an interesting way of approaching like this problem for ZenMaid and blah, blah, blah. But the actual book itself, the author was pretty much just taking random stories and situations and essentially like reverse engineering or saying, oh, they did it with this strategy without really any sort of like backup. So the entire book just read like a survivorship bias like book, right? As I'm sure there were plenty of companies out there that had better strategy than these guys and were just luckier in the market, better timing, whatever, like it may have been. So yeah, I've got really mixed feelings about that book. You know, a lot of good takeaways for us, but not a very good book. An example would be he started talking about the Iraq War or like the war in Afghanistan with the US and was like, oh, like if the US had just done this differently and it had like a real strategy, then like all these things wouldn't have happened. You're just like, that's a massive oversimplification. Anyways, enough about that book. So essentially for the ZenMaid strategy for 2019, like the big thing that he actually talks about is essentially in three parts. Strategies are identifying your strengths and weaknesses as a company, as well as the strengths and weaknesses of the competitors and sort of the industry landscape, right? Of where software in the industry, where the maid service industry is going specifically. So that's essentially step one. Step two is figuring out what you're going to do or how you're going to proceed based on that, based on the high level sort of lay of the land that you've determined. And then the third step is the actual tactical points of what you're going to do. So this will focus much more on the first two, the actual tactics and the things that we'll do. I'll touch on some of the things that Fran and I and you know, Alex and everyone else has come up with, the things that we'll continue doing, but really defining those first two makes it easier for us to go, okay, is this something specific that the team should be spending their time on? Does it fit into the higher level strategy? So the main strength of ZenMaid is that we have the ability to focus on maid services more than any other competing software that's out there. You have Service Autopilot, Jobber, you know, House Call Pro. There's lots of great softwares that are out there that are our competitors, but none of them focus specifically on maid services. The only ones that do focus specifically on maid services appear to not have marketing departments, to like usually be solo developers, or if they're trying to come in and compete with us, they're really far behind, you know, the game with us, and we should not be allowing really anyone entering the market today to be overtaking us at any point. We should be able to look at what they're doing, figure out what they're doing differently, and then find a way like around that. So in that sense, ZenMaid really has a big advantage there. So with that in mind, ZenMaid is going to be focusing in 2019 on all the things within the business that are specific to maid services. So examples of that would be like within the product or within the marketing, that all of our marketing material should be focused specifically on maid services. We already do this, but we're going to be trying to really double down on that. And where the competition can't really keep up is that if like Roland, who's the CEO of House Call Pro, if they decided that they wanted to try to compete with us, it'd be a huge waste of their resources to be creating content that didn't serve their like every industry that they're focusing on. So they can write really good content, and I think they have some good content, but it's not specifically for maid services, and that gives us the ability to really stand out on the marketing side. On the product side, we can also do lots of little things, both with our product feature decisions, but even with our labeling. Now, right now we have appointments in ZenMaid. We could easily change the appointments label to cleanings, right? Which like you can't really do in House Call Pro, and that's the sort of thing that makes ZenMaid feel like home to a maid service like owner. One of the things I'm actually going to be asking Alex to do right after we're done recording this, or right now since he's here listening, is changing the employees label. That right now we have employees and it says employees at the top. Really, that should say cleaners and office managers, right? Because that's just so much more specific to maid services. And some things, it's just really tiny things like that that can make us just seem like a much better fit to maid services. And then also focusing on the simplicity of the product and, you know, not adding in features that don't serve maid services, right? That sort of stuff. Yeah, so I was going to say, so this includes but is not limited to, in terms of focusing on maid services, this includes but is not limited to our product and informational resources, our content marketing, our interviews, and even our hiring. The hiring is another big one. Alex, this might be new for you. Maria, we were talking about this at breakfast this morning, but we're about to hire another maid service owner to join the non-technical side of the team, and we have another maid service owner that's interested in joining on a part-time basis. And if we can continue to do that, then it means that we continue to establish ourselves more and more as the industry experts. It makes Alex's life easier when he has new features that he's put together, that we can actually get internal feedback from our team before going to the customers, and it makes it easier for us to just get a lot of things right. So that hiring aspect is something that, you know, you're not going to be able to do that if you're Service Autopilot or your Jobber, right? Like that just isn't going to help anywhere near as much as it would help ZenMaid. So anything that's asked of our team that does not specifically serve maid services is not going to be really considered by us. I would say we're talking about 2019 strategy right now, but really we want to think of it as like by quarter. So at least for the next 12 weeks, it is set in stone that somebody asking for a feature that helps Airbnb cleaning companies but doesn't help the rest of our audience is just a no-go. It may be something we'll consider in the future. It doesn't mean that we're never going to do it, but in terms of really getting our focus right and figuring out what are the most important things that Alex can spend his time on, that Tincho can spend his time on, that our support team is going to be supporting as a feature, has to be maid service first. Adding in a feature that helps 5 or 10 customers but confuses the rest cannot be accepted, really. And again, that's at this current time. It's a strategy. It's completely malleable. We might change in like 6 months and go, we're going to compete with Jobber and Service Autopilot and go into a bunch of different industries. But even if we're going to do that, we want to be the best for maid services first and foremost. And once we accomplish that, then we can take the next step and think about other industries if that's a decision that we decide that we want to go for. So let's see. Yeah. Okay, so I'm trying to think if there's really, I mean, in terms of actionable stuff, being focused specifically on maid services, a lot of the actionable stuff is really just doubling down on the things that are already working for us. We're already doing really good content marketing. We've been doing that for a couple of years now. This year, we're going to be really stepping up on the video side. This would be an example, right? Stepping up on the video side and just creating a lot more video content for maid services, and then repurposing that content to maybe be blog articles, stuff like that. And along with that, one of the things that I keep meaning to do, but I haven't yet, is I think that on every single page, we should have an accompanying video that not necessarily is like, this is how to use the software, because we do have those in the top right now, that there is like the, this is what it actually is, but really more of like an educational piece of me or Courtney or Maria or someone else on the team talking about like, hey, this is the employee section of the software, this is why it's important to your maid service. So less focusing on the features and more focusing on like how they want to be thinking about essentially that section of their maid service, right? So yeah, just supplemental things like that. So some content will be for any maid service owner, but then we also want to have more video content that's specifically for the ZenMaid users and making sure they're getting the most out of the system, but not from like actually a feature perspective, which like sounds a little bit weird, but it's more like, it would be more like, for example, having a video on the ZenMaid booking form page that talks about the importance of having a booking form and why it makes the maid service owner's life easier and their customer's life easier, and how like not everyone books there, some people will still call you and blah blah blah. A lot of the things that me and Courtney are saying on most of our sales calls, we should really have those sort of videos on pretty much every single page, along the way, and doing content there. And that's just another thing that if you're a maid service owner, you sign up for a trial of ZenMaid, you go to the booking form page, and there's a video of Courtney going, hey guys, this is why you want to do this. This is how it makes your customers' lives easier. Here's my example form. Don't forget to click on the video in the top right to see how to actually set this up and implement it on your website. That's something that immediately shouts to a new trial user, like, this is not just a software company, like these guys know the industry inside and out. And really that's what everything we want to be putting out in 2019, that's what we want it to be, just shouting to any maid service owner that comes to our website. So I guess I actually will talk about some of the potential Achilles heels of ZenMaid right now. We'll probably just edit this out before like posting this, or we'll send the full one to the team and then edit this out if we're going to put it like onto YouTube, because I think it will be important for me to go over these before you guys like ask any questions if you have any. So the primary Achilles heels that I see for ZenMaid for 2019 is, so right now, Courtney leaving would be a big hit for the company, but I more think that that's actually a big Achilles heel because it would require me or someone else to really step up on really short notice. Otherwise, we're just gonna have like a broken sales funnel for a bit in comparison, that like just like, if she left, that would be like a big like inconvenience. Like, so that would be a big one. Alex leaving would also be a big one, that right now I don't think that we have the code base to a point that like, another Ruby developer could just come in and really take that over without quite a bit of explanation.
Yeah, exactly. But that won't happen. Like, I would always, even if I leave, I would always like teach the guy how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. But this is like, I'm more thinking of like if Alex gets hit by a bus, like that more sort of thing, right? So if Alex got hit by a bus, we would bring Arun right back in to figure out like what happened, and then after a couple of weeks, we'd probably visit Alex in the hospital. So that's a big one. The other one would just be the system crashing again, the way that it did when we did the redesign. We're getting much better with that. That's highly unlikely to happen, but for both of those cases, just writing more tests for the software would go a really long way, because if we have the tests written, then someone else could come in that knows Ruby on Rails, and through trial and error could actually figure everything out, push new features, and know if something was broken, if we had all of those tests in place. So that's something that we are going to want to spend some time on. Alex has been investing a lot of time, I think in the past 2 or 3 months, really just cleaning up the code, and that's a really good start to put us sort of on that path. We love you, Alex, you're irreplaceable. But as a business, we've got to think about, these like these sort of like things. I hope you don't get hit by a bus.
You should get me life insurance.
Touche. Yeah, so the system crashing, and then the other one. This is just one that the mastermind, like my software mastermind, that this is one of the ones that those guys thought might be a risk for us, and that would be any industry partners or consultants either launching their own software or choosing to endorse another software. Personally, I don't think that's actually that big of a risk, primarily because most of our growth actually comes from paid channels, where them doing that doesn't really affect us. It just adds another competitor sort of to like the layout or whatever. And then industry partners launching their own software. Derek Christian and those guys have already done that, but they don't have any interest in really selling it like to everyone. It's really only if you've been through their course and do it exactly the way that they do it, then they've created a really in-depth software. Derek gave me like a full demo of it and everything, and it's actually like really cool, but it would be impossibly difficult to try to start using if you weren't familiar with all of their stuff that costs $1,000, costs like a couple $1,000 to like go through and all of that. So I don't think that's really too big of a risk, but at the same time, the reason that we're going over these sort of weaknesses or risks is because from a strategic angle, there are things that we can do to either lessen the chances of that happening or to lessen the blow if that were to happen. And so that's sort of the strengths, weaknesses, and like I can tell you guys, so essentially, so where we want to go like moving forward, this is, I guess, a tiny bit higher level than like the actual like tactics, but to defend against the industry partners thing, that's essentially working with the industry partners more. And so there's a variety of ways that we can do that. That can be going to them for feedback on the software. Now that we've made a bunch of improvements since the last time most of them actually took a look at it. And so a little thing like that really makes them much more comfortable in endorsing ZenMaid. And if they give us feedback and we actually act on it and then come back to them, it makes them feel like it's their software in a way, right? That they can take sort of ownership of, oh yeah, like I'm actually helping to shape this software the same way that our customers shape our software by giving us feedback. Right? So a perfect example of that is we're planning on doing Debbie's pay for performance payroll, that when we redo the payroll system, or if we can find a way to add that in without redoing the payroll system, that is like a really big one, because if we do that, then she'll still recommend Service Autopilot for the much bigger services, but everyone that's below probably 15 or 20 cleaners, ZenMaid becomes the absolute no-brainer, and anyone that joins us and then grows to 30 employees is never going to leave us if they're reliant on the pay-for-performance payroll system, because no one else in the industry offers that, and Debbie has the audience and the pull in the industry for that to be warranted. There are other consultants who, if they wanted something like that they specifically teach, we wouldn't really be able to justify doing that just yet. So that would be an example. And yeah, there are some other things that we can do there in terms of just helping the industry partners. So there's them helping us and helping us to help their customers, but then there's also us just straight helping them. And so that's why if they come out with new content or they've got a new program that they're launching, that we're oftentimes more open than any of the other software companies to go out and promote that, because we help them to be successful. At the very least, they're gonna have the at the very least, like, they would give us a heads up if they're like, hey, like, we're not going to be endorsing ZenMaid anymore because of XYZ. We get to have that conversation with them, whereas if there's no relationship at all, then it's just a straight switch, right? So like, Sharon Tinberg, for example, used to recommend, I think it was Made Easy software, or maybe it was Made Books, and she wasn't happy with like essentially like how her feedback was being treated. She didn't feel like they were treating her like any sort of partner. And so we came in, we did treat her like a partner, and she just essentially made the switch over and began recommending ZenMaid, and there was never any conversation or any closure with that other company, as opposed to Debbie, who decided to go with Service Autopilot over ZenMaid because she has over 30 cleaners now, where she spent an hour talking to me about why they made that decision, about all the different things in the software that we would have needed to do to earn their business. And that feedback was unbelievably valuable, that we had already spent a couple of weeks working to add in different features and to make improvements that really served her and served Buckets and Bows in Dallas. But that conclusion call of getting that call of going, hey, we decided to go with these guys, but I wanted to talk with you about why, that's actually surprisingly important for us to really focus on, right? That, you know, if the consultants don't endorse us, we want that feedback. We really want that feedback, because that's what's going to help us to be the best in the business, and it's what's going to bring Debbie back to us eventually, right? And everyone else. So yeah, I think I've already been over just like the tactical stuff for the marketing is really just focusing every single piece of content specifically on maid services. Not just that, because we already do that. The other big thing is examples in the content that a lot of companies like ours, a lot of software companies will do, like the ultimate guide to Instagram marketing for maid services. If you're watching this, that exists, zenmaid.com/ultimate Instagram guide, or Google it. But for example, they would write something like that and then use completely random examples. Whereas if you look at the Instagram guide, there's probably 50 examples of different types of posts, and literally every single one of them is from an actual maid service that I screenshotted the actual post from them on Instagram. So it's little details like that that are going to really add up to making us, I wouldn't say like become industry experts. I think we already are industry experts, but really like doubling down and like just hammering that home. Yeah, the software, I talked about implementing on the software, about relabeling some of the things, but then also some of the feature decisions and stuff like that. I think that this model will make it a lot easier when we have a discussion on Slack to go, we're not going to do that feature and this is why. All right. So I think that's it. I think that that's all that I have to say for my nice little monologue here. Any questions?
Maybe a clarification question about the focus on maid services. Like one question that we had like repeatedly in the past is how we approach the whole Airbnb residential cleaning specialists. How do you see that fitting in this focused approach?
Yeah.
That's my question too, because there's a lot of residential maid service owners who do both.
Because it's a diversification, but it's also an opportunity.
But yeah, and it's still residential cleaning. It's just instead of cleaning for a homeowner, you're cleaning for basically an empty, furnished home.
So I don't think that we're going to focus on that immediately in Q1 or Q2 of 2019, but I think that what we should do is at some point we should sit down with a couple of owners that do the residential, so not just Airbnb. If they do just Airbnb cleaning, they're not part of our target market right now. And an important distinction here to make is that the big benefit of using ZenMaid, what makes ZenMaid genuinely better than virtually every competing software out there, is how we handle recurring services. Because the vast majority of industries don't have truly recurring services. If you're an electrician that uses House Call Pro, you don't have any customer that you go into on a weekly basis every Monday at 9 a.m. And that's a massive difference. And so even though a residential cleaning company can do it for the homeowner, or can do it for Airbnb, or for a property manager, the software right now does not serve the second two there, because there's no true recurring thing. Like the Airbnb owner and the and the like property manager, for example, are going to care a lot more about invoicing. They're going to care a lot more about having like those detailed work orders or like the scope of work that they're able to like to share. So there is a big difference there. Even though what the actual companies are doing is the same, the schedule management, which is our strength, is completely different, right? One-off, you know, like Airbnb cleanings, they want to automatically be notified as soon as the place is clean because because they want to let the next guest know that they can come and check in, stuff like that. So what I was going to say is, so how we're actually going to proceed, sorry for the long monologue again, but how I think we're actually going to proceed with companies, with maid services that also do Airbnb and also do vacation rentals, would be to get a list of those guys, find 5 to 10 of them that are on ZenMaid already, and Alex and I, or I will probably jump on calls with each one of them, that Maria as well, and to jump on a call on Zoom so that we can get it recorded for the rest of the team to watch. And what we're going to try to do to begin with is to get a list of all of the features that would make those guys' life easier, and we'll start by doing all of the features that will also serve the rest of our audience, because that'll bring us a lot closer to bridging that gap. And then at some point it'll be, okay, here's a couple of features that would make this perfect for a vacation rental cleaning company and for an Airbnb cleaning company, and it's not as big of a jump for us to make, and at that point it becomes easier for us to actually add that into ZenMaid without confusing the hell out of all of the maid services. So what we'll do is we'll get a list of all of the features and then prioritize based on what helps the current audience as much as possible. And we'll identify which are the ones that are just like, this will not be used by someone that just is a strict maid service working with actual homeowners, and we'll make the decision as it comes up of when to do that. So that would be the approach for that. So, yeah.
Maybe a few words on the focus on internationalization, speaking Spanish and stuff like that.
We were literally talking about that on the taxi ride over. It's a good thing for us to talk about here in the video as well. So Alex was just asking about internationalization of ZenMaid, and particularly language like translation. So ZenMaid is already international and can technically be used by people anywhere in the world that were connected into Google Maps, so that as long as the address exists on Google Maps, ZenMaid can be customized for that. You can choose any country and you can use it. It'll change to the correct currency. Once we get a new customer in a new country, we go in and add the ability for that country to be able to send text messages. So we're already well set up there. But this is something that as I just mentioned, that Maria and I were talking about in the taxi ride earlier. So the internationalization, I don't know about international, but Spanish is a really big one that we were talking about. It would be really cool if in ZenMaid here soon, and it doesn't even have to be for Spanish-speaking owners. We don't have to focus on Spanish-speaking owners. The big thing is actually the Spanish-speaking employees. And with that, if we added in an option to each employee profile so that the owner could check a box and say, this person would prefer Spanish or doesn't speak English or whatever it is, right? Like Spanish preferred or Spanish language, that then that employee's app, as well as the work orders and everything else that we send to the employees, gets sent in Spanish, right? And so that would be epic. We have Maria behind the camera voicing epic to me without actually saying it. So yes, that would be absolutely epic. And that's the sort of thing that you put that in place and it becomes much easier for companies that have Hispanic cleaners that may not speak the best English. It's that much easier for those guys to onboard their employees onto ZenMaid. It also makes it really difficult for a company that's using ZenMaid to move to another software. So it's one of those ones that if the cleaners are used to getting all of their instructions in Spanish and they speak Spanish, and now all of a sudden the owner decides they want to move to Jobber, they can trial Jobber, they can even quit ZenMaid and move to Jobber, and they're immediately going to hear from their employees, I don't understand, I don't get how this works, and it's going to make Jobber or Service Autopilot or whoever that much more difficult for the owners to actually use. So that's a really big one for both onboarding, conversion rate of trials, but also lowering our churn. So yeah, that's a very, very big one. That actually might be some serious work though, Alex, right?
It's like you did more or less half of the work on the web app.
Yeah.
Then there's like the other half to be made. Then on top of that, it adds like some kind of like slowness to the development, because every time you add some stuff, you need it translated.
Yeah.
But that's like minimal.
Okay.
It's usually a few sentences.
It's possible, but it'll still take a little bit more work. Yeah.
Just something to keep in mind. Or some of the new features will be English only first and then translated.
Yeah, and then translated later. Yeah.
And then the mobile apps is a whole different story. But the good news is that, you know, like this Expo thing that we're using, is getting developed more every month. And I checked the latest release, and the latest release is focused on making, on reworking the whole translation system from scratch.
Okay.
So it's actually now ready for us to do it top notch.
Okay.
So timing is good,
Cool.
but it's a big chunk of work as well.
Okay.
40.
Yeah. Yeah. So Alex, our CTO, was just saying that yeah, essentially we've done about half the work, or I did half the work when I was learning to code about a year ago. My mother always said that I half-assed things, and it looks like she was right. So yeah, we'll have some more work to do on there, but I think that's definitely something that we should be prioritizing from a product standpoint. And so you guys can see how, like, when Alex brings up something like that and goes, hey, like, you know, should we look into translating the software, it becomes much easier when we have this clear, bigger vision goal of actually, like, that fits in really, really well with focusing specifically on maid services, right? That if we're going to focus on Europe or on the UK specifically, then we need to translate it to Polish. And if we God, we have to provide Polish support. That would not be good. Yeah, but we could do that. We could have Spanish in the U.S. If we set it up correctly from the beginning, then we can give them different options where it wouldn't just be Spanish. Because the other big example here that would help, not a huge amount of our customers, but enough that they would never leave us, would be in Canada, in French, in like for the French Canadian speaking like areas, like Quebec, right? That a lot of them have actually asked for. They're like, hey, like, you know, legally we actually have to send reminders in both English and French, or I forget, I don't know if that was the exact example, but there was something that there's like a legal thing that they actually have to provide a bunch of things in both English and French, and those are the sort of things that you put that in place, assuming it's not too much more work than the Spanish work that we're going to do anyways, and that's the sort of thing that once they're on board with us, I mean, how are they going to leave us for another software if they don't do that? You know, I mean, at that point, it's like we don't even have to have the best product, because that would be such a deal breaker, right? But we're gonna have the best product too. Yeah. Trying to think if there's anything else. Any other questions? Yep.
The new pricing.
Oh yeah. So the new pricing. Yeah, we can talk about the new pricing here. Did you just want me to talk about like what it is, or
what it is, how it's changing,
okay.
Previous.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. At the time of this recording, ZenMaid currently has, I believe it's 4 plans, and then like a custom one if you don't qualify on like the 4th plan if you're bigger than that, and that's just $49, $99, $149, and $199 a month. So it just goes up $50 for each one, and that includes all features and is simply limited by the number of employees. And so what we are going to be doing, probably by the time this video goes live, because honestly Alex and I are planning to launch the new pricing pretty much after you leave, Maria, is it's going to be shifting to a true per employee pricing. So right now, if someone's signing up and they have 5 employees, they go to 6 employees, and it jumps from $49 a month to $99 a month. And even though that's completely fair, it makes sense, it's one of those ones that it's a little bit hard for people to stomach because they have one more cleaner, but they're paying double the amount of money compared to like the day before they added that person. And so instead of doing that, we're going to start with a $49 base and then add a flat amount for every employee that's added on going forward. And so what'll happen is it'll begin to just marginally like increase, but then there's also no ceiling on it. So we don't have to do any custom pricing for really big companies. That it'll just be like, oh, you have 50 cleaners, great, here's your pricing. Right, and so that's like a big thing that we're going to be doing, and the new pricing will end up raising the current rates by 20 to 30%. So when we initially launch, we're not going to be touching any of the grandfathered customers. Like, we're not even going to announce it. It's just people that come into the new pricing page will just see new pricing, and they won't know that we had pricing different from that. Once we have that settled in, we will be raising prices for current customers in all likelihood, but it's going to be at like a massive discount, right? That they'll pay something like 30% per employee compared to a new customer that would sign up with us today. And that's just like, as a thank you. Like, some of them have been with us for a long time here. And yeah, so we'll be increasing it a little bit, but they'll still be getting like a heavy discount. And the primary reason for that is just because, especially now, like with Tincho coming back here soon, that money is going to allow us to continue to create just a better and better product, right? So it's not just, I don't know, I guess gouging people for money. Like, pretty much everything we're going to be getting there is going to be reinvested into the company to make it even better for the current users. Yeah.
And who is Tincho?
Tincho is our mobile developer, yes. So Tincho is our mobile developer, and he's going to be coming in here soon and be working on a lot of the owner functionality for ZenMaid, as well as, a monthly view and some other things on the mobile app that have been requested. But the main thing that he'll be focusing on this quarter or next quarter will be that owner functionality, so people can like even give estimates from their phone, that they can add new appointments, tasks, add new customers, all of that stuff. And hopefully we'll be adding in photos as well, that hopefully employees will be able to take photos, like before and after photos. And like, just thinking ahead there, just as like a random idea, is a couple of our competitors already do that with the photos, but really what we should try to do is we should try to make it really easy for those photos to be organized, to be like shareable on Instagram or social media. Because like, one of the best Instagram posts that you can do as a maid service is a before and after shot showing like how well you cleaned up like a horrific bathroom or something like that. And if we had some way of like, just based on the timestamps, just going, hey, like, here's the two photos combined, if you just want to take this and just post it to Instagram quickly, that might be just like a really like little thing that probably wouldn't take too much effort on our part, but would really help people to just like get started with their marketing if they're not doing that already. So yeah. Questions? No? Good? Thanks for watching, guys.